Hi, I'm Kavita Sherchan and welcome to No Filter, No Frills. This is a four-part mini-series exploring the real stories of South Asian women working and living in Manila. We will be looking into the challenges stemming from the deep-rooted patriarchal mindset and the choices we make while navigating careers, family, and identity. In today's episode, we will be talking about the cost of having it all. But is it really having it all, or does it come with a trade off? Joining us today to talk about this are Geetika Arora from India, Sabha Khwaja from Pakistan, Tushima Kumar from India, and Shamala Abiratne from Sri Lanka. Geetika, would you like to start by introducing yourself, please?
Sure, thanks, Kavita. Hi, I'm Geetika Arora. I was born and raised in New Delhi. I've only very recently relocated to Manila since my husband was working here for the past 2 years, so I decided to relocate. In India, I was working with one of the world's largest real estate advisory firms. I was a senior director as part of their land and capital markets team. And I still continue to work in that role, but now I'll be transitioning and I'll be joining the firm's local office here in the Philippines. And thank you for having me here. I'm very excited for this discussion.
Sabha.
Hi, I'm Sabha Khwaja. I'm from Pakistan. I was born and brought up in Lahore. That's where I did my schooling, my college, and finally my MBA and started working in corporate banking. Since getting married, I've lived in Jordan, China, and now in the Philippines for the last 14 years. I have three kids. One of them is already in college, and the other two is a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old at home. And after a pretty long career break, I started working again, and now I work for a international INGO that works for affordable housing in the Philippines and in Southeast Asia.
Tushima?
I'm Tushima Kumar. I come from the town of Lucknow in India. I'm an engineer by profession and a poet by heart. I've had 30 years of corporate career in the IT sector across organizations like Siemens, Deutsche Bank, Accenture, Unisys, across different countries, India, Philippines, US. And after 30 years of corporate career, last year I decided to reinvent myself and doing different things like writing a book, doing some self-care which had taken a back seat. I'm blessed by two daughters. One of them is working after doing her master's in quantum physics, and the other one is still doing college, both of them staying together in New York. I'm also an ultra runner, and the longest I've run is 100 kilometers.
Hi, I'm Shamala Abiratne, and I was born in Sri Lanka, but educated and grew up basically in Thailand and mostly in Rome, Italy. My undergraduate degree is from Canada, and my master's and PhD are from Cornell University in the United States. I've had a long career in the development world, in the development sector, many years working also in India, partly for the Danish Foreign Ministry and then later for an international US-based organization working in the area of environmental management, water resources, and water and sanitation. I've been in Manila for quite a while now, and in fact now I'm retired along with my husband. I do fun things now that I'm retired. I love to paint and play mahjong and things like that. I've just written my memoirs entitled Dipinto di Blue, and I have two lovely granddaughters.
Thank you all. Let me start by sharing my story. I am an empowered and independent woman and equal to my husband. We both work full time, but when it comes to household responsibilities, I feel that the burden is disproportionately on my side, right? A house does not run on autopilot. You need someone to manage it. I always find that I'm usually the one who's checking everything in the morning before I get to work and everything in the evening before I go to sleep. So I wonder, why is it so? Is it habit? Is it conditioning? Why is it so? And I would like to ask you, Geetika, is it the same for you at home? And if it is so, why do you think it is so?
So thanks, Kavita. Yes, it is the exact same situation for me at home as well. In fact, I'm just like a year into my marriage, but not surprisingly, I have seen the exact same pattern even in my parents' marriage. Both my mother and my father, they were working professionals. In fact, my mother, she held a much harder job because she was a school teacher. So she would usually, she would wake up at 6 a.m. and then go into work. And I would see her, that she would sometimes even rise at 4 a.m. and make sure like everything is in order. She would make sure that her uniforms are laid out. My father's lunch is ready. And even when she would come back from her job, it would be the exact same. She would again start doing the household chores, etc. And as a child, of course, I would observe that. And I also at times used to feel very terrible for my mother because, no matter how tired she is, she was the one who was running the house primarily. Of course, my father would pitch in and he would help out, but the responsibility was on my mother's shoulders. In fact, she was also at that time, she was also taking care of my grandparents. So they were living with us. And I would see her do a lot of, she would also do a lot of work for them, help out and take care of their needs. And I would observe this, and I would like to believe that I've grown up in a very, very liberal household. But if I were to look at it from a very close lens, this was a very patriarchal household, right? And I would think, in my belief system, I was like, I'm not going to be this person when I get married. This is not the right way to be. But interestingly, when I got married, I've become the exact same person. I'm the one. I'm running the house completely. It's funny because there are times when my husband, is helping out, and I'm almost apologetic, and I'm thankful to him that he's pitching in. So I'm following the exact same pattern that I've seen my mother follow. I think it happens primarily because of two reasons. One, definitely, it's years and years of conditioning. I have seen my mother do it. So, and I think, of course, she must have seen her mother do it, and so on and so forth. So, I think it's years and years of conditioning, which then also leads to, some sort of a habit formation and expectation that the woman is supposed to carry on and do majority of the work in the house. And I think also, it's in our inherent nature as women. I think we are caregivers, we are caretakers. If you see how we have evolved, men used to go out, hunt for food, and the women used to stay back and they would take care of the social construct. So I think one, of course, it's in our nature, but I think it's a mix of all factors. It's conditioning, it's habit, it's expectation.
And I think those who are propagating the patriarchal system are relying on that logic. What about you, Sabha?
Yeah, I do feel it is pretty much a function of continuous conditioning, and what I would like to talk about is the concept of care chain. So a woman's burden is more likely for caregiving is likely to be passed on to another woman. Like for example, if I hire somebody to help me, it will most likely be a female to look after the household cleaning or cooking or taking care of the children, and she in turn would leave her household chores to another woman. It could be her mother-in-law, mother, or a sister. So, and this is across economic segments, across geographical levels. It's not really constrained to any one area. This is a global phenomena that the care burden shifts from one woman to another, very rarely from a woman to a man, whether it is taking care of household, taking care of kids, or the elderly. And the conditioning there is that we have a more nurturing or a caregiving nature. But I believe in the two genders, it's not the lack of ability to provide care, it's just that over the years, this conditioning social norms have made one gender more efficient at it, and that's something that unthinkably we practice. Even in my own case, it's rarely that I would let anybody else do something. I'll be like, no, let me do it more quickly. This will be more efficient. So that, and this kind of goes on unchecked, and many times we don't even stop to consider that, is this right?
I don't think it's about two genders. It's actually not always a man who expects you to do that work, right? It's first you, yourself,
Yeah.
and it's also the women, other women who are expecting you as a woman to do it.
Yeah.
So do you agree with me?
Yeah, that sometimes, female criticism can be harder, and even if your husband or your father will step in to do something, there might be this occasional shake of head, or my God, you're too spoiled. Those labels, or they don't always come from a bad place, but they do have a negative impact.
Yes, patriarchal thinking again, what we are discussing today. Sabha, I just mentioned about the patriarchal thinking, but despite all my feminism, independence, deep down inside me is also that patriarchal thinking. And like what Geetika said earlier about how she feels thankful to her husband, I also used to actually feel the same. And whenever we had guests and my husband would serve drinks or food, I used to feel grateful. And after everyone left, I would always say, okay, thank him for helping me. Then I realized at one point that, why am I thanking him? He's not even helping me, right? This is as much his job as it is mine, because this is his house, those were his guests too. So now I've stopped thanking him, and I've also tried deliberately making him work, contribute to the household work, especially when there are people around. When I was in Nepal, it was mostly my mother-in-law and my mother as the head of the household who would take charge of the household responsibilities. But when we moved out of Nepal and then shifted, suddenly the whole responsibility fell into my lap. And although now that I've realized that I am suffering from this deep-rooted patriarchal mindset, and I make sure that my husband contributes, even now I still feel that most of the work is disproportionately mine. If I ever complain now, the response is usually a surprise, right? What are you complaining about? You have everything. You have an understanding husband, you have a job, you have financial independence. So that makes me wonder, does having it all come with a cost?
From the outside, it might appear that you have it all, but does actually anybody have it all? That's my take on it. And then it's all about a trade-off, whether you are a working woman or you decide to look after your family and stay at home. Even then, there is a whole plethora of choices that you have to make, and I can be a stay-home mom and just watch TV, or just read books, or just pursue my own interests. Or the flip side is that I could be a very balanced person. So it all comes down to, what is your priority as an individual? How do you see yourself, and what do you think is your vital contribution in different spheres of life? So if I decide to work for a 16 years, I was not working. I was a trailing spouse, and that was the time I was raising my kids. And in that period, the criticism I used to get was that you wasted your parents' money in the very expensive MBA degree. Fair enough, but I was utilizing it to raise my children, set up a house, facilitate my husband in his career so that he could travel, and it was all okay. And we had a good time building that as a family, being a global citizen, learning the international norms, how to, settling, uprooting very quickly, and settling down in different countries, making new friends. And all of that is part of a journey. Then it is important to see what works for you. People will say different things throughout your life. You just have to see that what's valuable for you. And at every time, it's never having it all. It's always having what is most important to you and the spheres you serve, which is your family, your extended family, your friends, and that's how I view it.
Actually, I'd like to make 2 points here. First, when you have a job and a family and you are making money, that's what others perceive, right? That you have it all. And the second part is about, like, the homemakers that you mentioned, the home moms or stay home wives. I also feel we need to acknowledge the hard work and the contribution that the homemakers make in their life. Tushima, would you like to say anything?
Well, when you said the notion of having it all, there have been many a time when I've walked into a social gathering surrounded by friends and them remarking in envy, oh, you have it all, right? Like you have a job, as you mentioned, you have kids, you have home, like everything. But I think people don't realize when they say that or think about it, the effort and the sacrifices and the cost which has gone behind that perfection or maintaining that perfect facade. While growing up in Lucknow, I saw my mom, who was a professor, and my father, he was an engineer by profession. My mom would, I know it's the same story. I saw my mom waking up early in the morning, cooking for everybody, the whole household, and then running off to college. And even after coming back, she would prepare dinner for everyone and all the household chores. And I think her strong work ethics had a profound impact on my young, impressionable mind, setting that expectation of this is how a female role is, even though she was working. If I recall, I was very early into my career, like 5 to 6 years, and I had my first baby. And as soon as I joined back my office after my maternity leave, a week into it, and I was given an assignment to go outside the city. So I had to travel to Calcutta from Delhi. And this was for a workshop where I was the domain expert and they had called clients from Germany and all. This was when I was working at Siemens. So I flew in. 3 hours later, I get a call from home. Ma'am, your daughter is sick. She's running high fever. And I was just torn between my professional duty and my role as a mom. It was really hard for me at that time what to do. Somehow the word reached my boss. He was so understanding. Long story short, I cut my trip short and went back home. All was well. But this is just one incident in this whole journey, which there have been so many missed school conferences, there have been so many missed social gatherings because of work. Similarly, there have been so many missed opportunities at workplace of critical meetings because there was something at home which took priority. I think everything precious, these are the costs which we as working women pay for the cost of having it all. I think the first thing which went and took a back seat during that time was self-care. Mornings were a whirlwind of activity, like packing lunch, getting the kids ready, dropping them off to the bus stop or the school, getting myself ready, and I didn't have any time to fit in a workout schedule or fitness routine. While going to work or driving back from work, it was like, okay, what should the meal look like? The kids must have come back from school. How should I keep them busy? This is what life was like. I enjoyed reading a lot before, but then with all of this, home, career, kids, all my personal hobbies, which gave me joy, had to take a back seat. So I would say that having it all comes at a significant cost, and more so from a broader perspective. If I look at this is an Asian women, what they experience because of an additional complexity of the traditional expectation and cultural expectation of how they should behave. We stretch ourselves so thin performing various roles of a mother, of a daughter-in-law, of a mentor, of a boss, that I think the struggles are real and the cost is very high.
Geetika, would you like to say anything on this?
So I agree with both Sabha and Tushima. You know, everything comes at a cost. There are no free lunches in life. And, you know, I don't have children, so I can't even imagine as to, you know, when you have children, the demands on a woman, you know, there's so much more. So it's unimaginable for me to even understand, you know, having to miss school events, etc. I think, you know, that must be, you know, it is an harrowing experience, so to say, right? And when I, you know, hear their stories, or when I, you know, look at my mother's life or my sister's life, or you know, even when I reflect back on my own life, I do see women overcompensate in every role. You know, it's a known fact that far more women suffer from imposter syndrome than men do.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we are constantly trying to overwork, and we're trying to be, you know, we are trying to be these perfectionists, just so that, you know, we can compensate for these perceived inadequacies. We're not inadequate women, but we are always trying to, you know, overcompensate, I would say, in majority of our roles. And like Tushima rightly said, it comes at a cost. And I think the cost mostly is the cost of your health. You know, like I mentioned earlier, women are caregivers and caretakers, so we tend to devote a lot of our time in taking care of other people. So it comes at that cost, and at the time when supposedly, you know, we have it all, is also the time when women are going through perimenopause or menopause,
Yes.
and those are real struggles as well, you know, which nobody is talking about, you know, that we're struggling with that
Yes.
as well, along with you know, everything else that we are doing. So I think, yes, it's true that whatever that, you know, empowers us also weighs us down, so it does come at a cost for sure.
And one thing I've noticed is that society in general is not very sympathetic to the troubles of working women. I think deep down they still feel, at least in our part of the world, right, South Asia, they still feel that we don't need to work. So our challenges are nothing, and if we have any problem, that's our own because we chose to work. So do you think society views women's career as optional, and because of that they don't take the struggles of working women seriously?
Okay. So the idea of that women's career is optional is again very common, and when you complain, the response is that, oh, this is self-inflicted misery. That if you have trouble, you missed your kids' school function, or there's a meeting that you've missed. Yeah, but these are all, you know, your choice and self-inflicted. So something that, and that's where the conversation sort of stops. But I think among our female colleagues or other friends circle, we are able to dive a little bit deeper in that, you know, having a career is as much part of your personality as having a family or being a daughter. So it's almost like, you know, you kill my demons, my angels die too. So if I don't have a career, I may not be able to have a balanced lifestyle in other affairs also. What keeps you, and at the end of the day, and as I'm, you know, maturing, gaining more life experience, I've realized that, you know, having that personal filter of what people say, what you keep and what you completely throw out is very important. Otherwise, you will be the most miserable person, and when you're unhappy, you make people around you unhappy.
Right. Yeah. So you're right. I think, you know, society in general does, you know, they do not understand the struggles of working women. If I were to go tell anybody that I really miss my job back in India, and I really miss my life, you know, when I was working, you know, at that point in time, because I'm right now in a transition phase, I don't think anybody would really understand that, because you know, they would say that, oh, it was your choice to get married, and why are you complaining? So you would be seen as somebody who's complaining. So I think you know, what I think also society does not understand is that you cannot just box everyone in one category, right? I mean, I love being a wife, I love being a daughter, I love being a sister, while I also love working. So I think, you cannot box somebody in a certain category. So I think, yes, the choice and women's careers are always optional. And I don't think people sometimes understand the passion that even women have towards their work.
Yeah, that's very true. And, I think what makes this perception worse is that when we miss the social events, children's school activity, or, when we are not there to help the other family members when we have some kind of ceremony at home, right? So sometimes society, I think, feels that women use work as an excuse to avoid work. But in reality, we are doing two full jobs, right? Our professional work and then our taking care of the household. And even when we are at office, we are, or during breaks or early in the morning or early in the late at night, we are constantly thinking of what needs to be done, because we are so conscious of the fact that we have been away during this whole day that we try to compensate by constantly working on it. And I'd like to share my experience of Hong Kong. I still remember, my office was in a building above this shopping mall, and I had a toddler at home. Things needed to be done, bills needed to be paid, groceries needed to be bought. So not every day, but most of the days I would be running down to the grocery store, mall downstairs, buying stuff, paying bills, running around, and then on my way back to office I would grab a sandwich or so, and then eat in my office room. So that was my life in a nutshell. Whereas my husband would come back and say, "Oh, I went to this place and I had lunch with so and so," right? I hardly had that moment actually in Hong Kong. Every morning, every evening we're doing that, and even our weekends are really not restful, right? We are constantly trying to catch up on what we did not finish in the week, or trying to plan for the next week. So my question to you, Sabha, is how do you deal with this constant feeling of guilt?
If somebody says, like, I remember very early on when we were married, and I was having my first baby, I was still working in the bank, and there was an event that I had to bow out. It was from my in-laws, and I very graciously said to them that, no, I'll be in the office, I can't attend a brunch. And they were like, why do you need to work? Your husband is earning well enough. And at many times I check myself that the question that goes through my head is, do I need to respond and convince them, or just smile and wave and move on? So and usually I go for the second option, because I realize that the only person I need to convince is myself, and that's what I work on. That I will behave in a proper manner, and what I can do I will do fully. Where I feel that it is something that my time has a higher priority, I will prioritize that. And over the years I'm learning to reduce the guilt that was associated, because I'm sure we all have experienced those moments in the day or at night when we feel that, oh my God, we really neglected this and we should not have done that because we had some other priority. So I think as you go through your life experience, it's mostly self-management that improves, and I think that then has that impact on all your personal life and on your career, that you bring that sense of calm and control, and that's helpful for everybody.
I'm so happy that you raised this, because anytime anyone says something, especially when it comes to gender issues, I always react. And the constant feedback that I get from people is like, why are you reacting to everything? It's such a little thing. I always say it's the little things that build up and become a big thing. I am a feminist, so I give it back to them. And I think we really have to point it out to people so that they understand. And this is, our way of telling people that we are not against any category of people, any group of or any gender, but that, we are against the patriarchal mindset. My question to you, Geetika, is how do you handle this constant feeling of guilt, and what has helped you overcome that?
So, Kavita, it's really funny you mentioned this because one of the first things that I did when I, moved to Manila and I visited my new office was I went looking for a grocery store. So I went and I scoured the whole neighborhood and I was like, where am I going to find my groceries? I was almost in a panic mode. I was like, oh, now I've moved. I have to take care of my house. Where will I find groceries? How will I make sure that my husband and I are fed? And I wanted us to eat home meals. So I also don't think that we can completely rid ourselves of the guilt. You know, something Tushima you mentioned previously, which I could really resonate with, was the fact that, you know, there was a time when I remember I was working on a very, very important presentation, and it was something that some very important clients were flying in. And I'd worked really hard, and just on the day of the presentation, just a few hours before the presentation, I received a call from my mother saying my father is not, you know, keeping well and we need to, you know, take him to the doctors. And, you know, that time, that decision that I had to make, you know, whether I should attend the presentation, which I've worked really hard for, or should I go and attend to my father's medical needs, I took the decision to stay on in office and then have somebody else go with my parents. But, you know, that guilt absolutely stayed with me. I was like so apologetic to my parents for the longest time because I don't think you can completely get rid of the guilt. I think somewhere you have to make peace with the fact that you are trying to do the best that you can. In any situation, the intention is to do the best and, you know, to do justice to the situation that you're handling. And I think the way I try and balance my home and my career is that I think you have to very shamelessly ask for help. You know, the day you're not able to do it, you call your husband and you say, you know, I'm not able to manage. You please, you know, handle the situation. You step up. Or you call your mother or you call your father, whoever that you need to call. And if there is an emergency at home, you have to put your foot down in office and, you know, you have to tell your boss that I need to, you know, wiggle out of this, and, you know, they have to be understanding about it as well. And I think that there'll be a mix of both good days and bad days. I don't think you can actually really try and achieve a perfect day. And the day, you know, you do end up not being your best self, I think the best thing to do is just to forgive yourself. I think women in general are also less forgiving. You know, we do expect a lot out of ourselves. So I think you just have to be forgiving and be at peace with yourself that you're just trying to do your best.
Picking up from what Geetika just said, I think as the workplaces are changing, now there is this acknowledgement, and actually there is a lot of accommodation that if you have an emergency at home, people are generally very understanding. So I think that is important to acknowledge that, and for the other young girls who come and join workplaces, things have come a long way from when we started our careers to now. And if I have a child who's sick at home, I feel very comfortable sharing that with my supervisor and saying that, you know, these are the hours that I'll be offline. And I've been met with a very gracious understanding and very given those accommodations that do what you need to do, look after yourself and the family, and then, you know, the responsibilities are mine in any case.
I want to ask Shyamala, do you think organizations could do more to create an enabling environment for working women? And if so, what can they do?
Yes, certainly. And I agree with the struggle that all of you have been talking about. I'm from Sri Lanka, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Sri Lanka because I think it's been sort of a different case in a lot of ways. Sri Lanka, as you know, has had a very high literacy rate. Looking at my own family, you know, even my grandmother-in-law was a doctor, so forth. My parents both had the same degrees, in fact. So yes, Sri Lanka was all of that. But then fast forward to now, and what you see is you find university graduates, 65% are women. But guess what? Now, when you look at the labor force, it's down to about 35%.
Wow.
Okay, so it's a loss also to the economy because, you know, our education in our state universities is free. So yes, you know, in the big picture, it's a waste. But then, you have to look into why is this happening? And the why is all these institutional factors. Of course, there are the cultural expectations and so forth that we've just talked about. But there are, I think, some structural reasons as well that come into play. One of them, and it's I think happening in the other countries as well, is that we're moving very much towards a nuclear family. In Sri Lanka, 75% of families in the urban areas are nuclear. So you don't anymore have the extended family, the mother-in-law, the grandmother, to look after your children. So, you have that struggle by yourself, right? So definitely it's that. Related to that is, of course, that you don't have an institutional setup to absorb that flack, right? Countries like Scandinavia or China or even Central Asia, you have state-sponsored creches, you have daycare that actually provide you the childcare so that you can, have that, right? But now in Sri Lanka, when you look at it, children finish school by 1:30, 2 o'clock. Now the person who's working, being in this instance the wife or the mother, is still at work. What happens? Somebody has to pick up that child, somebody has to feed that child, somebody has to take that child to the extracurricular activities. Who is going to do that? And if you don't have a family member, and you might be in a class that can afford helpers, but it's not the same as your family looking after you. When I was a child, I remember, when I was a baby rather, I don't remember, but my mother would say that she used to go out to work, and the yaya was found drinking my milk.
Oh, wow.
So, these kinds of things happen, right? Okay, now, today you might have webcam cameras, but, these are the facts, right? So you find that you don't have that support.
Yes.
COVID-19, and I agree with Sabha here that it provided, I think, a slightly different mindset in terms of flexible working hours. Yes and no. Because many institutions have gone right back to the old thing of, everybody needs to be here, we need to have face-to-face meetings, etc. So, yes, but not really is what I feel about that. I think other things also come to bear. Safe transportation. A lot of women need to work late. You're a lawyer, you're a, whoever who's working late into the evenings. Do we in our countries have safe transportation? No. So that's a problem. So like this, there are lots of institutional things, I think, even just better toilets in an office.
So true.
It's something that's not really considered, right? So I think lots more can be done. I think efforts to do things like gender sensitization kinds of programs are a good thing. And it was funny because just yesterday I was talking to an American friend of mine who said that her daughter, blonde-haired, white, blonde-haired, working for a construction company back in the United States, she was being sort of shown around with the supervisor, and the supervisor, for her to hear, but under sort of in a sort of soft voice, but making sure she heard, said, "Oh, but you will be standing around looking pretty most of the time."
Oh my God.
This was in the United States. This was yesterday, and so she did a wonderful thing, I thought, which is she said to him, "Could I please shadow you at work tomorrow so that I can see what you do?" And she followed the man. She followed him even to lunch so that he couldn't goof off, and so she kind of proved her point, right? So all this exists. And if I go back to my own personal life, I was in school in Sri Lanka, only sort of kindergarten, first grade kind of thing. Every single girl, now woman, in my class, or not every single, 99%, went on to do a PhD. And guess what? None of them are married. They have very high achieving jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy Director General of the United Nations, central bank governor kinds of jobs,
Mm-hmm.
right? But they never married.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do
I
you
don't
think?
know.
Oh,
So I think it's all of these things. There were structural reasons why you couldn't marry and have a family.
Yes.
Apart from all the cultural
Yes.
reasons that, expectations and so forth that we all adhere to in lots of ways.
Sabha, you just mentioned that now the environment is changing, but until, like what Shyamala said, until the policies are in place, don't you feel like when your boss is being nice, you feel gratitude? So, would you like to add more?
If I talk about my experience, then over the past 5 years, I've had female supervisors, I've had male supervisors, and we work as a team. But I'm seeing that, there is more approachability. Whether a male colleague has a sick child at home, he is also able to very easily ask for that accessibility, that may I have some time off. And what is shifting, what is enabling this change is, from the organization, the focus is changing from the number of hours to outcomes. That this is your deliverable, by this deadline you have to provide it, whether you do it from a 9 to 6 time period or another time. There is that flexibility, and some of this flexibility has come post COVID-19, where which was a huge disruption, not always pleasant, but there were some good outcomes of that. While I do agree with Shamla that there are these systemic barriers like safe transportation, better sanitary facilities for females, and other institutionalized caregiving facilities that can enable young girls and females to have a continued sustainable career rather than a short sprint, when they're sort of all the cards align, and they have the right support, they have the right financial means to have a caregiver. So those barriers are there, and they will take a much longer time period to fix. As within Southeast Asia also, I think all of these countries at a different ladder point in terms of providing these facilities. But I think something that has happened and which can accelerate is this change in mindset, so that more and more it is acceptable for men also to look after kids, and it's not frowned upon. So these are small wins, and yes, we are very gracious for them, but I think this is something that these little steps can actually grow into something bigger, larger change.
That's true. What about you, Geetika?
So, I absolutely agree with them. And, I'll give an example as to what happened with me personally. So, last year when I got married, I took some time off for the wedding, of course. And then immediately after the wedding, my husband had to join back work. And I also decided, with this sense of duty that I have to get back to work immediately after the wedding, I said, I'm going to pack my bags, go to Manila for 2 weeks. And I'm going to join back work immediately. Also because my work requires, I'm in a client-facing role, so it required me to be back, sooner than later. So while I was in Manila, I got a call from my boss, and he said that, see, he said, I understand that you've just been married, and we understand that, you have client meetings, etc. But he said that this is also a very important time for you. I think you should spend this time with your husband. I don't expect you to come back to work, within 2 weeks. I mean, it would have been a different situation had I been in India. But he said, I'm happy to adjust your role, at least for the next few weeks, next few months, in a manner that you're able to contribute. There is enough and more work. You can still give the same output, but we'll try and package it in a manner that you can, deliver that in a remote fashion. And for me, because of that, I was able to spend, a few months after the wedding with my husband. And for me, that was outstanding leadership. And I think what organizations really need to do is to enable leaders to be able to take decision for their teams, for their workforce, right? Because if you're going to be very stuck in these processes, then you're not going to be able to enable your team or your leaders to be able to do things for your team, right? And I really agree with what you said, Shamila, because I think organizations also have to be slightly more sympathetic to women and their needs in particular, right? Now, something like even better toilets, they have to be a little more sympathetic and aware of, what the needs of the women workforce are, safety. Maybe a man doesn't need, a ride home, but, Delhi, where I come from,
Yes.
it's very scary for a woman to be traveling home,
yes.
very late at night. So they have to be aware of those flexibilities that have to be given to women, and then enable your leaders to be able to deliver that. So I think, yeah, for me, it's about enabling your leaders and just a little more awareness about what the women need in general.
Well, I agree with all of you, but I also feel, and I really understand what Sabha and you are talking about, enabling leaders and leaders changing, people's thought. But here, I think this is happening because we are either working for multinationals or multilaterals, right? So it's a totally different work culture. And when we talk about working women from South Asia, it's a different scenario. And we are talking about offices and government offices in villages or even in capital cities. It's totally the whole environment, the scenario is totally different. They will find very few bosses or leaders like the people we are talking about. So I really still feel that at an organizational level there should be clear policies and guidelines, and to create an enabling environment for women. And it was really wonderful talking to all of you. Tushima and Shyamla, you didn't get to talk much this time, but the next episode the mic will be all yours. Thank you.
Shilapatra.